you're having a conversation with Donald Duck and, you suddenly feel faint and need to sit down. A human would know what to do there. I'm guessing the large language model is not trained in that particular scenario.
It would just quack.
Right. Imagine you had to hire Disney and you had to hire 50 people to pretend to faint 50 different ways so the large language model could understand what to do. Like, I think that's a very funny outcome of all of this.
Len, hello and welcome to AI Having a Clue. How are you?
I'm well, George. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Your background is in computer science. I know that's what you kind of studied, and you, in a way, back in your kind of educational days, studied artificial intelligence, maybe before it became the thing that it is now.
That's right. So my master's thesis is in computer science, and it's in a field of artificial intelligence called evolutionary algorithms, where you give the computer a problem to solve, and you don't tell it how to solve the problem. You tell it what a good answer would look like. And through the process that mimics natural selection, like evolution in a computer, it eventually will find either an optimal solution to your problem or something very, very close. And the first time I ran it and it actually solved a problem, honestly, it looked like magic to me. It's not, obviously, but it's really interesting to see a computer come up with a strategy for solving a problem that I hadn't thought of before.
We've been talking on the podcast in previous months about how Disney have stuck their toe into the water of AI, then quickly jumped out of that pond because they were a bit worried. We've seen it with their kind of very short-lived partnership with OpenAI. As a business, what's Disney's attitude towards this new technology, and potentially what are their concerns, which they clearly have because this partnership was so short-lived?
They're in an era right now of what I would describe as cautious experimentation. So there are a lot of things that they do behind the scenes with AI to speed up different processes. Like if they're making a television show or a movie with special effects, they understand that using AI to do the computer graphics stuff, the rendering pipeline for computer graphics, is relatively low risk, high reward. They can bring things to market faster and cheaper by using that. I think the issue where everyone is concerned, not just Disney, but entertainment companies or media companies in general, I think the big issue where they're concerned about is the question of who owns the data inside a large language model like ChatGPT when it's trained to do things like make videos of Mickey Mouse.
There is a real question mark over IP and who.
Yeah, and IP I think is the big barrier for them. It's not, it's intellectual property, not like, is it physically possible to do this?
Yeah. Where are the kind of the deep rooted concerns in this area then?
Imagine you're Disney and you succeed in teaching ChatGPT how to create a realistic looking 7-minute cartoon of Mickey Mouse, right? Disney clearly owns the cartoon because that's in the United States what we would call a work for hire. You've paid somebody to do a task. The output of that task is yours because you paid for it, right? The interesting thing, though, is in the process of training a large language model like ChatGPT, how to draw Mickey Mouse and what it means for a Mickey Mouse cartoon to be realistic, right? ChatGPT learns how to draw Mickey Mouse, right? That's what you've asked it to do. So without specific guardrails in place, the knowledge that ChatGPT has gained on how to make a Mickey Mouse cartoon then becomes available to everyone, like you and me, right? Even if it's a private model that isn't available to the public, it's common for ChatGPT to train the next generation of models on the previous generation of models. So that information on how to draw a Mickey Mouse cartoon would get passed on to subsequent models. And the interesting thing from, I think, a legal perspective is the way that ChatGPT knows how to draw Mickey Mouse is essentially a series of numbers inside its memory. Who owns those numbers, right? Because it's not the Mickey Mouse cartoon itself. It's the numbers inside of the model that teach the large language model itself how to draw Mickey Mouse. Who owns that? And I think the legal area here is sufficiently gray or sufficiently unexplored that Disney is hesitant to give any company that sort of capability. And the interesting thing too is if you look at some of Disney's recent U.S. patent filings, they're actually working on ways to be able to trace how a large language model learned a particular piece of information, so that you can say things like, yes, your LLM knows this, but it knows it because of me.
There is a case, isn't there, which is there are billions of images of Mickey Mouse on the internet across different publishers, and a large language model could hoover all of those up, and when you sort of crunch them all together and get the numbers, it could draw you a pretty good Mickey Mouse. So I wonder if there's a sort of a reframing thing here, which is like, would Disney not be better off giving them almost, here's the sort of the genuine Mickey Mouse, so that you can tell that it's Mickey because it's come from us, rather than it's been sort of trained to do anything else. You kind of put the guardrails around it that way. If it's Mickey, it's got to be our Mickey, and if it's something else, then it's kind of not ours.
Yeah, we've seen a little bit of this from recent changes to large language models. So in the past month, companies like OpenAI or Anthropic have stopped letting you give prompts like, write me a Harry Potter story in the style of J.K. Rowling, right? And you can't do that. You can't say, write a story about blackbirds like ravens in the style of Edgar Allan Poe. You can't do that anymore. Yeah. So rather than prevent the training from happening, they're preventing the back end, the inference phase from happening. The problem is there are ways to get around that.
Of course.
And so it's an arms race at that point, right? Can you be more clever than the 1 million people who are trying to get the LLM to do something it's not? And the answer is probably you can't.
Enough IP chat. Let's talk about...
There we go, yeah.
George wants to get into theme parks. Come on.
I want to get into theme parks. Let's talk about AI in the themed entertainment space. I suppose, firstly, how have we seen it show up so far? And I guess also we'll get into kind of what's in the pipeline, what is exciting and new, and how they might be implementing some of this technology. But so far, Len, have we seen much use of AI in these billion-dollar theme parks?
Not directly. We've the first set of things that were adopted for AI tended to be things like back office tasks, like predicting staffing needs. How many people do I need inside the park to run it? Things like managing hotel reservations. I've seen interesting patents where Disney's using AI in an audio model to listen for high-pitched squeals that would indicate a ball bearing on a roller coaster wheel is going bad, and allow Disney to replace it rather than the ride fail unexpectedly and shut the ride down. So that's really interesting.
Interesting.
I think Universal Parks are also prototyping the use of image recognition cameras that help it better estimate how long you're going to wait in line. And that might be the most guest-facing obvious thing that we've seen so far in the parks. The other thing that's sort of like back end that Disney's done, I know, is to use artificial intelligence to enhance how you look on ride photos. Like when you're going down a flume ride and it captures a picture of you going woo. Want to make sure that everyone's in focus. That they can airbrush out anything.
I was wondering why my teeth looked so white in that Splash Mountain photo.
I'm in Hollywood there. Yeah. So those are a couple of things there. The more interesting things haven't appeared in the parks yet, but we're getting close.
What's coming that is looking like it could be exciting?
The most interesting patent that I've seen, again, it comes from Disney, Universal's doing the same thing, though, is to train a large language model to talk with guests using an avatar from one of Disney's characters. Ooh. So imagine walking up to a screen, and instead of, tapping on it to find out where you want to eat lunch, imagine having Donald Duck engage in a conversation with you about what kind of food you like and where you want to eat. And so the natural language processing capabilities of a large language model come in handy there. Obviously, Disney wants to make sure that the language model behind the scenes knows how Donald Duck would talk. So behind the scenes, it's feeding it, like every every Donald Duck film or TV show or comic book that's ever been made. But that is a really interesting use of LLMs to allow it to have dynamic, spontaneous conversations with guests in the parks. I think that's really, really interesting.
Have Disney been, or Universal, or any of the other theme parks out there, been bold enough to try and apply some of that into their characters? So, I don't know, let's say one of the Star Wars robots could roam the parks and have interactions with people in attendance there.
Not yet. And I think a lot of that is more legal liability than anything else. Imagine if an autonomous Star Wars robot ran over a small child's foot, right?
Disney's worst
there are
nightmare.
issues. Yeah, there are issues there. So those things tend to be human controlled.
I
In
feel
terms
like
of conversations, that's a little bit more safe.
I feel like there's that spontaneity as well with humans that can kind of deal with unexpected situations. Like, it's bad enough if you're using a chatbot to talk to your car insurance provider, and that awful bit where you kind of get to the end and they're like, oh yeah, we can't help you with this, phone this number, and it's this awful customer experience. Like, imagine that at Disney, you're talking to Moana and you ask her something she can't answer. She goes, yeah, I'll just go and talk to guests. It's like that awful. The magic is over in that instant. Whereas I think a human could maybe start out, well, someone faints in front of them, or they spill candy floss. Humans are pretty good at that stuff.
But that's a really good point, because one of the reasons people love going to these parks is because it is this very deep connection that they have. It's very human first, and are you seeing, Len, that I guess organizations like Disney are being so cautious about protecting the humanity at the core of these places, that the thing that makes them so special, that maybe they're a little bit fearful of what artificial intelligence might do?
So first of all, every large company fears the unknown, right? And Disney especially. I think the big concern for them would be not necessarily whether the guests believe that they're talking to Donald Duck or Mickey Mouse, in a scenario like that, but what happens when things go wrong. Like, to James's point, you're having a conversation with Donald Duck and, you suddenly feel faint and need to sit down. A human would know what to do there. I'm guessing the large language model is not trained in that particular scenario.
It would just quack.
Right. But imagine it was, right? Imagine you had to hire Disney and you had to hire 50 people to pretend to faint 50 different ways so the large language model could understand what to do. Like, I think that's a very funny outcome of all of this.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot, Len, in things like TV shows where AI might be able to kind of personalize your journey and give you an individual narrative within something. Could you see technology being applied that way into some of the rides to kind of enhance experiences?
So there was a really interesting patent that Disney filed a couple of years ago, and it was having a computer vision system recognize two things. One, as you're riding through a ride, well, what specific things are you focusing on in the ride? And then number two, what is your emotional response from your face as to the things you're seeing? And they would use that information to send you down one of two paths in a ride. So imagine you're in a ride like Snow White's Scary Adventure, it tells the story of Snow White. And for some children, it's mildly frightening, right? Imagine you could sense while a family is on board the ride, whether the small children are enjoying the ride or becoming scared from it. And then they could dynamically send you down one of two paths: the path that goes through the scary parts of the story, or the part that immediately sends you to the ending where everything is happy and everyone's back together. I think dynamic storytelling inside of a ride based on real-time clues as to whether you're enjoying the story is a really interesting use of AI.
We got into this big debate with advertising, weirdly, where
Mm.
when the sort of advent of digital came along and you could personalize an ad for, the one person on a Tuesday at 4 o'clock who was stood outside Leicester Square with a red umbrella, you could give them the ad that was kind of perfect from that one time.
Yeah,
We sort of
yeah.
overdosed on that. And what we forgot is
Right.
that the fact that millions of us sit down and watch a Disney film and we all see the same thing, that means we can go into
Right.
school and to playgrounds and to work the next day and talk about it, and it creates these cultural moments. So there is a danger that, 10 people end up with 10 different rides on this thing, and, I think it has its benefits, but it's sort of like that thrilling bit where you race round the mountain, and that's the thing you can talk about with other people. And if some people get the sort of slightly easier route because they looked a bit scared, I'm pro and against these things, but I do think this idea of having shared cultural moments, particularly when you've spent a lot of money to go into these things, is really important. This is quite unlike me.
I know.
What's going on?
happening? You're like usually
going
more
on?
like I totally
Big
agree.
softy.
Exactly.
He's worn me down.
Got to him. Len, let's talk about your business touring plans. Now, I've used this many times.
Have you?
It's a very expensive thing going to these parks, as Len knows more than anybody. When you go and you've spent all that money, the last thing you want to do is waste hours and hours waiting in long lines. Now, touring plans is this genius thing, and you put in the rides you want to do, and it gives you the perfect order to do them, and it saves hours it's been proven. It saves hours and hours. It's amazing. It's absolutely brilliant. Now, Len, this is a product that you've created, and I know the technology that you've used for this has gone on to be used in the pharmaceutical industry and in lots of other interesting ways. But this is something that is you've kind of had for a while now. To me, it sounds like artificial intelligence. It sounds like an AI product, not an LLM, but an AI product. Yeah. Would you agree? Is it an AI product? And if so, are you just way ahead of the times?
Yeah, actually it is. It's so the touring plan software, the thing that tells you which rides to go to and when, came directly out of my master's thesis, which is the evolutionary algorithms. So that's a form of AI. And that's been 25 years.
Wow.
It's kind of funny because every once in a while I'll go back and look at the I have to update the source code, right? The computer program that creates the touring plans, and the initial line of the initial section of the very top of the first part of that program is a date in 1997 when I started it, and I'm like, there are people using this software that weren't born when I wrote this code, and that makes me feel old. But yeah. But we also use modern tools. We use large language models like Claude and ChatGPT every day to help with things like data analytics, help to predict how long you're going to wait in line, to predict the optimal time to get one of those ride reservations from Disney called Lightning Lane or from Universal Express. And then sometimes, some of this code, again, dates back 25 years. I've forgotten a lot of it. I use large language models a lot to help with very complicated programming bugs that would take me days to solve. Yeah.
Some people these days might say, well, I don't need touring plans. I'm just going to ask ChatGPT the best order to do theme park rides and avoid lines. Now, what would happen if you turned to an LLM and got it to do that?
I think that anybody who knows anything in any particular industry, James, you could probably do it for marketing. You could pretty quickly figure out the boundaries of what an LLM is good like. So for our listeners, though, let's give some background here. So the way that a large language model learns is by reading billions and billions of documents and remembering which words are typically associated with other words. So for example, if I were to give you the phrase ulterior, the most common word that comes after that is motive, right? Right. Because ulterior is not generally used without that, or the most common time that you hear ulterior, the next word is motive, right? So, so the core of an LLM is based on, in part, on knowing which words typically come after other words, right? So a lot of the advice that an LLM gives is along the lines of, this is what most people say as an answer to your question.
Yeah.
It's the average opinion from the general public, right? And I'm sure that our listeners have plenty of examples, again, in the industries or the things that they know, where they know something to be true that the general public does not think is true, right? And the problem with that is that if something wrong is repeated enough,
It's
the LLM will learn the thing that is wrong and present it confidently as fact, right? So that's the big problem that we face. And in the case of touring plans, one of the big things that we see is people will ask a question about trip planning or whatever, and sometimes, many times, the answer to the question depends on information you haven't yet provided. Like, for example, what's the best day of the week to visit the Magic Kingdom, right? An LLM will confidently tell you, like, Wednesday or Thursday, something like that. But really, it depends on the time of year because, as you know, George, the Magic Kingdom hosts special events, parties during Halloween and Christmas season in August, September, October, November, and December, in which the park closes early 3 or 4 days a week. And that greatly affects the crowds on those days. And in fact, the effect is so large that if you looked at it over the course of an entire year, those 4 months affect the answer for the entire year. So really what an LLM should be saying is, instead of just giving you an answer, which it will do, it should say, what month are you going? Because my answer depends on if you're going in January or July. And it doesn't do that yet.
But it does give you that sense of authority, doesn't it? It sort of
It sounds
says it
great.
unequivocally. It's a Wednesday.
So confident. Yeah.
And I guess it's drawing from things like subreddits and stuff like where, there could be lots of back and forth on people saying lots of things. And I guess what the LLM's trying to do is kind of average out that thing. Because, within a subreddit, there could be 60 different people saying 60 different days of the week and not agreeing. So you're getting an average. That's such a good point.
Len, have you let the LLMs, or have you blocked, I should say, the LLMs from scraping your touring plans data?
Some of them. And the reason is, so it's a tricky thing, right? So you can't block Google without getting delisted from Google search results. But there are certain bots, like anything from China. We don't get very many customers from China. China's blocked from scraping. We also prevent the bots from scraping images on our site because we pay for that bandwidth, and images obviously are a lot of bandwidth. So, and we have, tens of thousands of images on our site. That's tough. Other times though, it's a trade-off. Like as long as the LLMs will say that we are an authoritative source on an answer to a question, then I'm fine with it. Yeah. So for example, and I love this, ChatGPT thinks that touring plans is an authoritative source, especially for Epcot, which I kind of love. So that's fine, right? If we're getting mentioned in the search results, I can kind of see the value proposition there. But I'll give you another example. Amazon is building a set of LLMs, and its bots scrape our site all the time. We have literally got not a single referral. No person has ever visited our site coming from Amazon's bot. So that is a lopsided relationship there. We're getting nothing. They're getting everything that we know. So I think we're starting to block that as of Monday.
I mean, it's interesting, James. We've had a few conversations, haven't we, about the face of kind of search marketing changing, how if you are a brand, you are all of a sudden having to think about how you are coming out in LLM search results. So interesting then telling us about that.
Yeah, but by the way, just popped it into chat. What's the best day to go to the Magic Kingdom? The rough pattern is best Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday. Usually decent. Monday or Friday. Slightly busier. Saturday and Sunday. It's basically a non-answer.
It's a non-answer.
It's basically, well, here's 7 days of the week, and they're kind of all the same. Brilliant. Not going to get that. Not going to get that from touring.
So it's funny. So if you go to our site and you go to like touringplans.com/Magic Kingdom, we will actually tell you, like, based on the time of year what that is. So the LLMs haven't incorporated that knowledge yet, which is really interesting.
How funny.
I will just say it is quite crazy, James, because you go in there, you might be going in like 10 months time. You could put, I'm going in on Tuesday the 6th of October, and it will give you, it's going to be a 5 out of 10 on day on this day.
Yeah. I will say the other thing, and James, you might have recognized this as well. LLMs are good at associating what word comes next in this sentence. They're not really good with tasks that involve time.
We've talked about this before.
A time-dependent task. So there's something about the fundamental nature of time, the temporal aspect of reasoning, that LLMs haven't quite captured yet. And that for me is really, really interesting because it's fundamental to the problem that I'm trying to
Yes.
solve. Like time-dependent scheduling. And I like to think that I've spent a little bit more time than the average person thinking about what the nature of time is. But yeah, to see that LLMs also have the same problem is like, hey, we're all in the same club. That's kind of funny. So
True. How long do I want to
Yeah.
spend there? How long do I want to wait in a queue? What
Yeah.
time? Everything is time dependent in your world.
it'll give you an answer that sounds great, but when you sort of like look into the reasoning deeper or say, have you considered this? It all kind of falls apart. Yeah.
And as we found out, James, AI can't tell the time.
I can't tell the time. No,
Can't
no.
tell the
Hang on.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, Len, we do a little game on the show called ChatGPT Roulette. So
God.
you open up your LLM of choice, and
All right.
we want to find out what the last thing that you asked it for. Now, James and I play along with you, and here's the thing, Len.
Go ahead.
Every single time we play with a guest, James and I have the most boring answers ever, and our guests always come in with something so much more interesting. So we'll go first
Right.
because otherwise you
Okay.
will show us up. James, first or second?
I'll go first. Can you reheat a baguette that was bought fresh yesterday in an air fryer?
Are you okay? Of course you can.
160
here's the thing.
degrees, 3 to 5 minutes, and it was good.
Well, I
Here's the thing,
could have told
anything's
you
edible
that.
once.
Yeah. George?
Unbelievable. I was at a restaurant and I'm not a big wine buff. I didn't really know, there was nothing on there that I saw that I particularly knew. I love a Vino Verde. That's my favorite type of wine. So I
There
took
it
a
is.
photo of the wine menu and said, which of these wines is most like a Vino
That's
Verde?
good. That's pretty
That's a
good.
great query, actually.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's maybe a little bit more interesting than my previous
Yeah.
ones. Go on, Len, show us up. What have you asked?
I get it. This is me being a nerd. Does the NVIDIA CUDA compiler have a tool similar to Valgrind that can check for memory access errors and array out of bounds errors?
Yeah, I think it
Oh
does.
no, he said the word. He said the word.
Oh, and I'm just embarrassed that I didn't know it. Right?
We were talking
If you
before,
guys
actually.
know
You
the
think
answer, don't.
Yeah, you think it
don't tell
had.
me.
Dad, George, actually. we were
I
talking
mean,
before.
I was debating it, and I spent.
What a query!
Oh.
It actually answered it for me and then fixed the problem too.
Oh,
Overnight while I slept.
good.
Come on.
All of
I
our
was like,
problems
wow,
were
that's-
fixed. Hooray!
Len, it's been such a pleasure chatting
It was
with you.
so fascinating, Len.
And thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you
us
for
on
having me
AI
on,
Haven't a
George.
Clue.
James, great video. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.